Welcome to Voices Against Violence, a Harmony House podcast to educate, empower, and serve as a voice for survivors. We aim to shed light on crucial issues surrounding domestic violence, offer support, and inspire action for change. Join us as we work together to create a community where all individuals can live a life free of abuse.
Welcome back to Voices Against Violence. My name's Kirstyn. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at Harmony House.
And I'm Charity Jordan-Rex, Prevention Program Manager for Harmony House. And today we are really excited to have some very special community partners in the room with us. We have Jennifer and Nancy from the Victim Center. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to Voices Against Violence.
Yes, I'm super excited. And we've all been saying here at Harmony House, this is our 50th anniversary, but it's also the Victim Center's 50th anniversary.
Absolutely.
So happy
anniversary.
50th.
Happy co-anniversary.
What was happening in Springfield in 1976? This is all I want to know.
That both of these incredible service agencies got founded. I know, so incredible. Well, Jennifer, Nancy, thanks for joining us today. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we know that you do so much work supporting survivors of sexual violence. For those who are listening, who are in the Springfield, Greene County area, who maybe have not heard of the Victim Center in the last 50 years, can you tell us more about the Victim Center and the services that you all provide?
Sure. And we want to just thank both of you and Harmony House for inviting us on your podcast. And we are happy to be here. And happy 50th to Harmony House as well. The Victim Center is very proud of its history, and we started out in 1976 and was founded as the Rape Crisis Center with a part-time director and volunteers. That developed into the Rape Crisis and Sexual Abuse Center. The name shortened to the Victim Center, or TVC, as sometimes you'll hear it called. The first victim advocate with the Victim Center was placed in a secondary location in Christian County in 1997. And we've kind of come full circle to where we have embedded advocates here in Greene County with Springfield Police Department. And that's what Jennifer, who's here with us today, does. We have in-person advocates at our office site at 815 West Tampa Street. And then we also we focus on trauma-informed therapy services that are free of charge to the community. And along with that comes classes and some support groups that are offered throughout the year. We don't have a specific date or schedule for those.
They're kind of on a rolling basis?
They're on a rolling basis based on interest and when we have enough people to collectively have a class that in a specific area. Now, we do have some that are scheduled monthly or, every other month for coping skills class. We have coping skills classes. We have introduction to healing from trauma. We have a sexual assault support group. There are some criteria to these groups. We're not a good fit for everybody, but we do try. If anybody's ever interested in art therapy or the sexual assault survivors group, the coping skills classes, or LGBTQ group class, that also comes with a follow-up support group. All you have to do is call the crisis line or our office during business hours and talk to an advocate to get that information from them and make sure that you're a good fit.
That is excellent.
That's a lot.
I know there were so many services listed there. One thing that stood out to me when you were describing the history of TVC is just how it has shifted and changed in name and in services over the years to meet the need of the community. And I think that's probably why both agencies have been around for 50 years, is because that's what it takes when you're working in nonprofit, when you're working in victim services, is shifting and meeting the need of the community where they're at the moment. So, okay, you said something that I'm sure some of our listeners' ears perked up. You said no cost trauma-informed therapy. So
yes,
someone who's experienced sexual violence, they can just call TVC and receive no cost trauma-informed therapy.
There, like I said earlier, there are some criteria for our grant funding and those type of things. But we will definitely, if we are not a good fit, we will try to get you connected with an organization or entity that is a good fit for whatever services you're seeking. But yes, the services we do provide are all free of charge to the individual that is receiving them. And we also do serve secondary victims, which are witnesses and family affected by that victimization of that individual.
What an incredible resource, and something that we stay curious about is the support for secondary victims. So glad to hear that folks are being served within a multitude of arenas. So thank you.
Yes. A couple of notes. We share our hotline with the Victim Center. And so that's another thing. And we have a therapist here on site at Harmony House, Jeannie, who serves our clients, but she is staffed with the Victim Center, but her office is here. And so there are a lot of ways that we collaborate and work together. Before we move on quickly, are those services available to anyone? Like, as long as they can get to you,
Our therapy services, of course, an individual does have to be kind of in the local area. There's not a cutoff of, you have to live in a certain county, but as long as you're able to transport yourself to, to and from appointments and be able to attend in-person appointments, that is, we'll make a consideration for services. As far as advocacy, a lot of that is done over the phone, connecting with individuals, doing crisis intervention, advocacy, safety planning, just empowering them to make, educating them about what's available to them so they can make, empower them to make their decisions of what's best for them in that moment. And just kind of education's a key piece to that.
So it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Can you, in kind of layman's terms, define what sexual assault is?
So I define sexual assault as any non-consensual sexual act that you don't have the ability to consent to. That can include any sexual contact, any kind of attempted rape, any forced sexual acts, whether it's coercion, threat, anytime you have the inability to consent due to like intoxication, age, disability, all those are encompassed in that. And it can happen to anyone, regardless of your age, gender, background. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Jennifer, thanks for bringing that up. So in my experience, that's a bit of a myth around sexual assault, is that it happens to one particular group of people or different demographics. Can you bust that myth for us here today?
So it actually can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter what your race is, what your gender is, where you come from, whether you're in Hollywood or somewhere else. It can happen to anybody.
Yeah, it absolutely can. And I think that myth that it only happens in certain demographics or to certain people can really be stigmatizing and prevent people from coming forward and reporting. Have you found that to be the case?
That is true. That's one of the things that one of my myths is not everyone reports. And people think that, everybody reports it, but that isn't the case.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to dive down that rabbit hole for a little bit, because I do think that people have this opinion that, if it was significant enough, someone would report it. Break it down for us. What are some of the reasons that someone might not report or go a really long time to wait before they report?
Well, they may not feel comfortable reporting. Sure. They may not be ready to report it at that time, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. That just means that they don't feel comfortable at this moment. Stigmatism, like what are people going to think about me?
I think also, too, that the one myth surrounding sexual assault is it happens by strangers. It's committed by a stranger. And a lot of times it's not a stranger. It's an acquaintance. It's a loved one. It's somebody that they have known in their recent history, or sometimes they've known them for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that keeps people from reporting, or that's been some experience that I have seen over the years, is that people are reluctant to come forward. Victims and survivors of sexual assault are reluctant to do that because it may be somebody that at one time they cared about, and maybe still do.
Sure.
But how's this going to impact my family, my kids?
Right.
Some people, they have kids in school systems and have access to the public and media and things of that, even though a sexual assault survivor and victim shouldn't be identified in a public, on the media per se. But I think that's all in the forefront of someone's mind when they think about reporting and how they will be perceived. Absolutely. Even the welcome that they may get, not welcome, but
the response.
But the response.
Right.
from like law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
And that I think, that all plays a part and factors into the reporting. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. And I can tell you, I don't have any statistics on it, but from the reports that I read, I don't see very many unknown or strangers. I see more of people that they know, that they've been in a relationship with, that family members, and so that's what I see the most of.
Vast majority of the time.
I love busting that myth, because when we talk about violence and crime, there's just this idea that it's the scary stranger in the trench coat, or it's the person walking down the street. Yeah. And no, you are statistically you are more likely to be victimized by someone that you already know. Absolutely. So there's so much overlap between domestic violence and sexual violence. So I appreciated that you said this can happen to anyone, because I think that is such a misconception. Just like domestic violence can happen to anyone. And unfortunately, it's most likely going to be someone that you know. I wonder if you can touch on just briefly another, I think, kind of misconception. So when those events are happening, I hear people say, well, did they say no? Why didn't they? If they didn't say no, well, then, must not have really been that big, so I wonder if you can speak to how consent plays into this, and really what, why would someone if you find yourself in a situation where maybe you're being forced to engage in contact, you might not ever say no. Why might that be the case? Can you talk about that?
So sometimes I hear, I'm scared. I'm scared of them. If I say no, what is going to happen to me? They may not be able to consent. They may be in a incapacitated state that they don't have that ability to consent. Maybe they don't know that it's okay for them to just say no.
I'm curious if you are starting to see, and the clients you're working with and the reports that you're seeing, if you're starting to see some folks coming to you that maybe human trafficking is a part of what they're experiencing.
I don't see a lot of human trafficking for me. I have seen some cases for like when they were younger, and then that's becoming part of it as they've gotten older, like if something else happens. I'm not saying they don't report it, but I personally don't see a lot of that. Just things that like in the past, like when they were younger.
I do think that human trafficking goes largely, there's a large percentage of it that goes unreported.
Unreported as well. And when we're talking about the unreported piece too, like a clarification, when we're saying unreported, we're talking about reporting to a victim service provider, law enforcement. One thing that I heard a lot of when I worked at a rape crisis center was, why didn't you report? Well, I told my friend, family member, whoever, they didn't believe me. Why would I go through an official channel to report it? So I just think that's one more added component, is if there is a barrier of belief from the get-go, that's going to make it way less likely that somebody reports, which is why it's so important that we have services like you all who are going to listen to and believe survivors.
So let's talk about what you do. So you're a victim advocate, Jennifer.
Yes.
So what do you do? What does it mean? And what does an average day look like for you?
I will, when I call that person, so I get a task, and then I call that individual, and if they answer, then I will listen to them, find out what resources they need, validate them, allow them to just vent, and then kind of try to help them regain control. One of the things that I know that I say a lot is, I hear it's my fault. And I'm like, it's not your fault, just kind of that validation. And then help them have a better understanding of if they are reporting the police policies and the procedures, how that it's going to go. Obviously, I can't tell them how it's going to go. That's going to be between them and the detectives. Right. But just the interview process. I do sit in on interviews, providing the victim would like to have an advocate in there. It is always their choice.
Awesome.
I think I didn't mean to interrupt. I think it's important to understand that a lot of the majority of Jennifer's contacts are made through referrals from the police department where somebody has come in and made a formal law enforcement contact or report and have identified they would like to be contacted by an advocate, or they've not identified a safety factor that would keep her from calling. We don't particularly like cold calls, like us reaching out to you. We want you to be, or the survivor to be able to be that, not take that choice away from them. So if somebody says they don't want advocacy, or there's a safety factor that we know of that would put them in harm, Jennifer's obviously not going to reach out to that person, but her number's listed on the Springfield Police Department website, even though she does not work for the Springfield Police Department. She is embedded with their detectives, so she's built rapport with them and knows the process.
And that's so beneficial to survivors. Just the research shows us that when there are advocates embedded and working alongside law enforcement, there's just better outcomes. You said, I can't say which way it's going to go because, that's going to be up to them and the detective. But it's there's such better outcomes when it comes to reduced harm, like secondary harm, the vicarious, the re-traumatization. There's better outcomes when it comes to prosecution. So really, what a resource that we have right here in our community working alongside our law enforcement. I want to expand on something too. So you were giving us a rundown of, you validate, you tell them about what to expect, the resources. You do that professionally. I'm thinking if I'm just like an average listener and I know somebody who's been sexually assaulted because the prevalence for sexual assault is so high, right? I probably do know someone who's been sexually assaulted. Those are also just great tips for me to know as like an average listener. If somebody I know tells me that they've been sexually assaulted. So just, you said, believe them to validate their experience.
We're not judgmental.
Yeah.
We meet them where they are. So sometimes I get people who are like, can I just call you back? It may have happened yesterday and they're like, I'm not ready to talk about it right now. And it's like, here's my number. You call me when you're ready to.
Because they maybe haven't even slept since then. They might have been at the hospital or doing a police report or all kinds of different things.
Yes.
Okay. So meeting them where they're at.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So someone calls the hotline and the victim center answers. What does that process look like from the time you all are receiving that call to them actually, I guess, walking through the doors and beginning to get services? What does it look like to actually get connected to services at the victim center?
They're, as far as they'll make that crisis line, the call taker, sometimes that's a trained volunteer advocate. Sometimes it is a staff member pulling a shift on the crisis line. But they their goal for that call is going to be crisis intervention, advocacy, as far as the education about what's there, but just to listen primarily, and safety plan, identify that, confirm their immediate safety. And if they're not safe, coordinate what the next steps look like in the next few minutes. If they are safe in that moment to talk on the phone, what does your safety look like for that person? And what does that survivor, that caller, what do they identify as safety for them? And how do we get you to the next business day when agencies open back up for business hours? That's safety planning, and maybe it's helping identify safe shelter, places to go. That may not be that may be something like Harmony House, depending on the circumstances, but it also may be a friend, family member that individual doesn't know. There's a lot of things that go into safety planning that we aren't going to talk about today, but they safety plan primarily. And then they make sure that they have the contact information to get a hold of somebody at our office or one of our partner agencies. If it's somebody that they need to hand off because they have more full wraparound services or something to provide to them, they'll get them connected in that way, giving them name of the agency, phone numbers, same, with our office. If they just need follow-up advocacy, we'll connect them with a full-time advocate in our office during business hours. But we try to get them to a safe place and a safety plan in place for them once they leave that call.
I think that's really helpful to know. I don't like to go into a situation not knowing what to expect. So thank you for kind of walking us through that process. I'm wondering if you can tell us, the Victim Center has been around for 50 years and you both have been in your roles for a while. I'm wondering if you are seeing some trends and what that work looks like. How it's changed over the years, but if you're seeing some maybe forms of harm or some new kind of trends in the work that you do. Can you speak to that?
My answer to that would be just because my exposure is not as often as I'm in the back half of that, but the exposure I've had to it, I see drug induced or
drug facilitated.
Thank you. I was at a loss for my word there, but just drug facilitated assaults.
Sure.
And I do also believe that we've seen a increase in human trafficking, people that identify it as human trafficking. I think human trafficking's always kind of existed for a lot longer than we've given it the name of human trafficking. But
that's probably true.
Yes. But I think that the public is more aware, and I think eventually we're seeing a pickup in the active role of the public to try to assist in deterring it. But those are the two that I would say I see kind of an incline, or you see more prevalent.
Sure.
One of the things that I see a lot of is like the online dating, and
tell us more.
Yeah, say more.
So, they're meeting people that they honestly don't know, and they're meeting them. Sometimes they're meeting them in places that are more private than public. And sometimes there are like text messages between them. And I just think that it's becoming more prevalent to do the online dating. I see a lot of that come through, that they've went out on a date with somebody that they met online. And years ago, you would have been meeting them in public, probably.
You had some kind of shared interaction. Maybe you met through a friend of a friend or something like that.
Sure.
But this is literally just somebody that you're meeting online.
Yes.
And you mentioned the text messaging part. I'm curious, with the texting back and forth on the apps, I wonder if it builds in like this false sense of security of like, the person.
That's just what I was going to say, was I think that the fact that you're either online or through an app or texting, talking to somebody you've never met or seen in person, but I think it gives that false perspective of, I know this person. When you know an identity they want you to know, not so much truly who they are and what their motives are.
Exactly.
So
that is correct. You may not even know what they actually look like. So
Yeah, great point.
can put false pictures up. They can,
Catfishing.
Right.
I hear them say, well, I've been talking to them for 6 months, but they've never met them.
Yeah. I think, that is so problematic. I used to work with young people in one of my previous roles. And so I'd get these teens coming up to me like, this is my new boyfriend. We've been online dating for a year. Have you met him in person? Okay. That's not a real relationship.
A year.
But,
Wow.
the texting and the screen time, FaceTiming, all of that, it does give you that false sense that you know this person. But as long as it's online, like they really can put anything forward that they want. I'm curious if you, as you're seeing kind of this uptick in issues with online dating and people being harmed as a result of that, are you beginning to see AI playing into this at all? Are you hearing from clients that I'm just curious.
I've not necessarily seen an uptick in my position with the Victim Center, but I'm sure that it has played a role in victimization of individuals, whether it be helping just fill out that persona of who somebody wants to be perceived as or manipulating photographs and things like that, even though that's kind of a step away from, it's not physical assault on somebody. It's still, it takes a toll on a person. It's still a victimization of that person.
So what you're describing is like the creation of digital sexual content that isn't real. It's like a deep fake, and is a form of sexual violence against somebody because it's non-consensual content that's being created in their likeness.
Yes.
So just so I'm clear, you're saying that if that is what someone's experienced, the Victim Center can still help those folks if they've experienced harm from digital abuse?
I think that it would depend a lot on the situation. I can't say that just because somebody like identity theft type things, that's not something that it has to be a violent or sexual based crime. But if it had a sexual component to it, that is a possibility.
Isn't that so interesting? Because we started this conversation by saying, the agencies that have been around this long are because that they meet the need of at the time. And that's now a conversation that we're going, well, now the need is around this. So interesting to see how service providers across the country are going to be navigating this moving forward, because I think it's just going to get easier and easier to make that kind of content.
Yeah. I'm curious what you think the next few years for the Victim Center looks like. Do you think your job decreases as more people are aware? Do you see an increased need for your services?
I would like to say that I'd like to see I'd be worked out of a job where I didn't have anything to do in this role.
Every nonprofit ever out of a job.
But unfortunately, realistically, that's not probably ever going to happen. But I do see the Victim Center is here to support the community and the people that need us as far as, those therapy services and just the support. The advocacy is a key piece of that. And you mentioned earlier, Charity, the prevention education piece. I think getting in the schools early, identify, letting, as far as our prevention education, kindergarten through like 5th grade is what Brittany provides prevention education classes to. And I think getting that information out to kids that age where they're like little sponges soaking all the information up. I think even though it's a tough topic sometimes you don't want to think about people thinking that way in the content of your, context of your children. It's important to know that happens and that sexual abuse does not, and assault does not just happen by strangers, like we mentioned earlier. And so getting them prepared younger, having more awareness, because we all know kids learn, they're at a level just years ago that they'd be a lot further at a higher level of school before they start learning about some of the things they do this day and age. But I think, that prevention piece is a key piece to just getting them aware of what's going on and what to avoid. I think, kids are smart, and they can pick up on that kind of stuff. And I think just knowing that, and then if something does, to support them, that you're going to be believed, and that to find who are your safe people, that kind of thing.
Empowering young people with information and then avenues to get and seek help. What other information would you like to share? What haven't we talked about yet that you would like an opportunity to share with us?
One of the things that I see is trying to get our victims transported places. Transportation is a huge issue.
Yes. You're preaching to the choir.
Because this is not a televised podcast, I'll just describe what just happened in the room. I think all of us just exhaled and kind of shook our head a little, because yes, a service provider after service provider, that is the barrier, transportation.
Huge. Every time I talk to somebody, it's like, can you get me transported here? And I'm like, I can see if we have any resources.
I think every single nonprofit in Springfield has those same conversations with their clients. And we all have stories too of clients who, they spend all day on the bus trying to get from one place to another.
Absolutely.
And they still have, they have jobs, they have kids to pick up at school. So city leaders, if you're listening, you would be helping thousands of people in the community if we could figure out transportation.
One of the topics that we could have touched on earlier, but haven't, but I don't want to get away from today without bringing it to the forefront is that the Victim Center does offer a hospital response to sexual assault victims. There are some criteria, and we do need the consent of that survivor. So if it's been a drug facilitated situation or something that if they're not able to give consent, we will make sure they are provided with our contact information, and we will be there when they are able to have those resources in that conversation. But we do have a protocol in place for being asked to come to the hospital, and a training regimen for our volunteers before they're approved to go to, for their volunteer training. That's a kind of an advanced level that they work towards, but they can go. It is a process that's initiated by the SANE at the hospital.
So the nurse. So if someone does go, they've been assaulted, they've experienced some harm, they go to the hospital, and the nurses who will call the Victim Center.
The nurses here in our local area in Springfield are going to ask that individual if they would like to have an advocate, because that's part of their rights, is to have an advocate available or made available to them. And absolutely, they'll ask a series of questions, but that is one of them. As soon as it's identified that they would like an advocate, they may ask some questions as far as, would you like them in person or talk to them on the phone? Because everybody's got a different comfort level with that. Not everybody wants you there in person by the bedside, but some people do, and some people do not have support outside of, they just don't have support with them at the hospital. Maybe their support is in another state. They live out of town, whatever. There are some situations that we can't respond to in person, but they are limited and they're varied. There's not really a good way to go into that right now, but typically a SANE or a sexual assault nurse examiner will initiate that once they've been identified that they want an advocate. And we do our best to try to get that process. They know if we get a volunteer that takes that call, they're notifying the staff on call person, a full-time staff person, to assist with that. And if the volunteer's trained and able, they go. But if not, we find somebody that is in a position to do that. So that is a service that we do provide that wasn't made real clear earlier.
Thank you for highlighting that program. I'm glad to know about that. I'm glad for our listeners to know about that.
When they need an advocate, I'm typically the one that goes during the day. I always make sure if the victim is able to talk to me, I will talk to them on the phone before I go and just make sure. I know that you told the same nurse you would like to have an advocate. Would you like me to come now? And then I will go.
And I imagine offer some of the same advocacy that you would otherwise. So the validating, the believing, the resource connecting, that all happens in the hospital.
Yes.
Very great.
They do have my number. They're welcome to call me when they're also out of the hospital. If I give them some resources and sometimes those don't work out, they'll give me a call and we can find some more resources for them to help.
Sounds like a lot of your role is connecting folks to resources, which just speaks to the fact that you meet them where they are and then assess the needs as they come up. So, Jennifer, I know that your role involves advocacy. So tell me, what does court advocacy look like? What would that include at the Victim Center?
So I go to ex parte order of protection court.
Okay.
We speak to anybody who's in there. It doesn't matter if it's the victim or the respondent. Everybody has a right to have an advocate. If they would like us to sit with them, we will sit with them in the courtroom. We do have our pamphlets and our business cards available, and we will hand those out. And we just try to make sure that they're supported any way we can while they're at court.
I imagine that going to court for ex parte would be so intimidating, not knowing what to expect. And so just having a friendly face there that they already know you and that they're getting support through your services must be such a comfort for folks.
It is. I really think it is a comfort for them because a lot of them are scared. They've never even been in a courtroom.
Sure.
So I think that's a benefit that we get to do that.
That's excellent. All right. I'm going to leave us with one last question. What one takeaway would you like our listeners who maybe are local, maybe not? So consider that too, that maybe they're across the country and they're learning about victim advocacy for sexual assault survivors at this time. What one takeaway would you want them to have from listening to this podcast episode?
That they're not alone and that there are programs that exist and everything that we talk about is confidential.
Great.
I love that.
I think, as far as the fact of we do believe you. You do have somebody in your corner, and you may have been told that somebody's doubted your story, or are you sure that that's what happened? I think having the opportunity to know that there's somebody there that does believe you, that it's not your fault, and that they can come forward and be supported in that capacity.
Well, I'm sure that those messages are exactly what somebody needed to hear today. So thank you so much for sharing about your roles in the Victim Center. Jennifer, Nancy, thanks for coming on Voices Against Violence.
Thank you for having us.
So much for being here.
Well, thank you for having us and extending that invitation. We were very grateful to be given this opportunity.
All individuals have a right to a life free of abuse. If you or someone you know needs help, please call our 24-hour hotline, 417-864-SAFE, 417-864-7233, or chat 24/7 with an advocate on our website at myharmonyhouse.org. Visit our website or follow us on our socials to stay up on the latest news and events. This is Voices Against Violence. Thanks for listening.